Hey there, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. We are going to be listening to a heartfelt show today. I want you to tune in. I want you to get this information, but I got to also do what my job entails me to do. This is 1220 AM KDOW. We're listening to the Heart of Innovation with Kym McNicholas and Dr. John Phillips. Please, oh, please, oh, please make sure that you guys are ready to get this information down. Make sure that you are ready to hear what's being said and just listen to a story from, well, your fellow Americans. I got a little bit less than 10 seconds right now to get you in, so let's take this time, let's take this breath, and let's get in right. I appreciate you and take care.
Sponsored by The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation, 60 minutes that could save life and limb with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by Patient Advocacy Group, the Global PAD Association at padhealth.org, in partnership with Reflow Medical, the pulse of medical ingenuity. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of the Global PAD Association, Kym McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of Save My Piggies Health and Wellness, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. And this is a Save My Piggies special. And you don't want to miss this incredibly powerful story of Hector and his wife, Melissa, on their journey to save Hector's legs. We also have Hector's amazing limb salvage podiatrist, Dr. Amy Bodart, all from El Paso, Texas, a part of the Limb Savers Society over there in that area of Texas. We're going to get to that story in a moment, but first I want to welcome my amazing co-host and the creator of the Save My Piggies series, Dr. John Phillips. Thank you so much for being here. Both of us had big weeks, and I know we want to get into this story, but you were a special guest at a conference for a medical device maker, of course, Reflow, sponsor of our show, potential limb salvage device being distributed, already approved in the UK, but waiting for it here in the US, a retractable stent. You had the opportunity to inspire the company and all of its reps to help us in this fight to save life and limb.
Well, first and foremost, happy Saturday, Kimberly, and the rest of the crew. Yeah, it was a great little opportunity. There was their national sales meeting, Reflow Medical. I was just in Texas, and we're talking to folks in Texas. So obviously, Texas is a huge state, but yeah, we were down in Fort Worth. They had their national sales meeting. They had asked me to kind of help with teaching and training. It was a little bit of a role-playing exercise with their sales force. And I'll just say this, I walked away from that meeting with hope, not only hope with new technology, but also just the hope that there is, and let me just say this, most, if not all the companies that we work with are trying to do the right thing. But Reflow is kind of putting their money where their mouth is. They're helping sponsor this show for us. And I just really try to reiterate to them, like, you guys have the opportunity to be a limb saving company, honestly, like, because all of your equipment pretty much is tailored towards chronic limb threatening ischemia and the blockages that occur in the vessels, particularly below the knee. And it's a unique opportunity, and their sales force is enthusiastic. I had a lot of questions. They were great sports. Again, you're kind of putting somebody on the spot, basically, to sit and to pretend to have an interview with me. Like, how are you going to sell this product to me as a physician? We did some role playing. The CEO, Issa, was there, and the leaders, Guntar and their crew. I mean, everybody did a great job. So fantastic opportunity. Really, really stoked, and just want to give them a shout out. Like, they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, I've never met. I mean, a lot of reps get a bad rep, but I have had nothing but amazing experiences with the most passionate people in limb salvage for so many of these companies, especially Reflow Medical, where their reps really care about limb salvage and even have their own personal stories. And even some of the engineers, when I went down to Reflow, some of the engineers have personal stories and they have a personal mission to literally do everything in their power to create products and to put products out there that are going to try to save limbs. And I think that that's so important. And I know so many doctors are having trouble keeping up with all of the different innovation out there. That's why it's really important for patients in particular to take a step back before any sort of procedure and say, hey, I'm going to get a second and sometimes an even third opinion to really make sure I'm making a well-informed decision, understanding all available options out there, because actually, in many, many cases, no procedure is needed. Walking is frontline treatment for these patients. So again, make sure you get multiple opinions. And with that
And
being said,
yeah, I'll
go
just say
ahead.
one thing before we jump in. The folks at Reflow, I think they understand their mission, and I think that they're really committed to raising awareness, not only in the community with physicians and proceduralists, but also the wound care community and patients at large. And so I was just really kind of excited to see this,
Yeah.
and we'll see where it goes. Their device hopefully will be approved by the FDA soon, and then launched, late, maybe early second quarter or late first quarter, something like that. So I told them, I said, I want to be the first guy I know how to use it, and we'll see.
I'm
'Cause
sure
I
you
like it.
will be,
It's a
because
cool. It's kind of a neat
they're
little
right there.
device. Yeah. So anyway, yeah,
Well,
let's
everyone always
jump in with.
asks. Yeah, everyone always asks about a retractable stent, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that does. But also, what I love about the reps is they've all embraced our no cost walking program and always are out there mentioning it to their doctors, which is incredible. So they're about conservative treatment first and delaying procedure if at all possible,
And I
because
think
there's so much you can do.
if you, as a company, if you take the patient's best interest at heart, and
Yeah.
if like that is your mission, you will do well. You will sell I mean, again, it's a company, they're there, got to make money, but if you do what's right, you will be
Yeah.
rewarded both financially and I think ethically and socially and all that good stuff. So
And I
kudos to
see,
them.
Dr. Amy nodding. I know that we have our guests that we got to get to. Can you launch into your moment of inspiration so we can get things started and introduce you to our wonderful friends that are here today to share a very powerful story?
Sure.
Dr. John Phillips, spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
See, don't you
Feel
love
like
this, Dr.
this
John?
is- if
Everyone loves
Everybody,
your
yeah, I mean,
stinger.
I have to kudos to the crew at KDW
Yeah.
KDOW for putting that together. It's awesome. But anyway, so, big Monday coming up, right? Martin Luther King Day, the inauguration, the Ohio State Buckeyes, which I'm in
I
Columbus.
knew
They're playing.
football was coming.
They're playing for the national championship in
Let's
Atlanta.
go
So,
Irish.
that's all right. You know what? I hope it's a good game, and I
Yes.
hope the right.
Battle's already begun.
I hope the right team wins. So I've got a quote from Martin Luther King. And I wanted to try to find something on like tenacity and perseverance, because anytime we do these Save My Piggies, you're always talking to obviously the patient, hopefully a care provider, but also a family member, often a spouse or partner. And that spouse often is the one that's like poking them to get things done. And they sometimes are a little bit more tenacious than the patient. And I think we might have that here. I don't know. We'll see with Hector and Melissa. But this is the quote. So Martin Luther King says, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And I think a lot of us sometimes don't have faith in maybe the disease, maybe the process or the system that's going to help me get better. And so you always have to try to find that faith in your care team, whoever your spouse, and again, maybe God too, and hope that things go well. But you got to take the first step in order to, they say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So Martin Luther King, just looking forward to a good conversation today.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to hear about Hector's first step to limb salvage, right, Hector? So stay with
Yes,
us.
ma'am.
Don't go away. right here on KDOW.
Leg health can.
It's so funny. I warned Dr. Amy beforehand that we're going to try not to go into a tangent, but we go into a tangent. We
So
just do.
so Amy, like we could go on forever, and that's the good thing and the bad. Like sometimes I wish this. I don't know that it needs to be Joe Rogan-esque of like 3 hours, but sometimes I wish we had a little more time to, and we do obviously because we're all live on YouTube, right? YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, we can go live. So what I try to do, Dr. John, I don't know if you've ever gone back to the edits, but
I've seen
I literally will take those chunks after the show and incorporate them into the show so that like with the regenerative farming one, I'm still working on it. But I just try to then expand it, but we can go on, and make sure that we can expand on anything afterwards because I just edit them in. And I don't know if you've noticed, you're like, wow, I don't remember that order in which we talked about that, but okay.
That's the
Because
beauty of
I'm the
what you do,
master.
Kim. That's the beauty of what you do. That regenerative farming one got a lot. Like I heard a lot of good things about that one. I was really excited too. That was a good conversation.
Can you do the 27th? We have and Amy, you might even be interested. It's so fascinating because it was a guy, the regenerative farming guy is actually in El Paso.
Really?
And Amy, I think you said you were single. He's single and he's adorable too.
He's
I don't remember this being a
matchmaker,
dating show.
producer,
Okay,
Emmy
Cupid.
Award-winning. That's
15 seconds
amazing.
till we air.
Saying, he was very cute. I know.
bad.
Sorry. Sorry, Amy. No, they just talked about on the show the other day, the guy that I was blushing about. So it's all fair game, I guess. We're all friends here.
Yeah, so
You know
much
Hector is going to be on your case, Dr. Bodart.
The heart of innovation.
Wait a minute, this is public.
Here's award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are Save My Piggies. It is January, Saturday, the 11th, and let's get right into it. So we have Hector and Melissa and their wound care specialists, Dr. Amy Bodart. So Hector, tell us, thanks first and foremost, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about how you first started to, I guess, realize that there was something wrong with the blood flow in your legs.
Well, it started when I started dialysis. I'm a dialysis patient, so it started with that. I mean, I would go to the dialysis center, and I got my legs were going numb, my feet were going numb, not my legs, my feet. And then while I was in dialysis, one day I hit the machine that for dialysis with my toe, and I got a little cut, and it just I didn't pay. I mean, man, you think that nothing's gonna happen and that you're gonna be fine, and give me a little bit of down here in El Paso. It's a big Hispanic, community. So, they would tell me, put this on, put that on, it'll go away, don't worry about it. Get this this hierba, which is like like a medicinal plant or something, and put that on and do this, and I just didn't pay attention to it. And then I started showing my wife, and then she's the one that started telling me, go to the doctor. But of course, I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm not going. At that moment, I didn't like doctors. I mean, I love my doctors now, but I just did. I would get very anxious and I would get very nervous to go see a doctor.
And why is
So
that? Did you have an experience or what kind of goes through your mind in saying, I know there's something wrong with me. I know I should go because if I go sooner rather than later, it's more likely that they have a treatment for me. But if I wait, but yet you don't go. And what's going
well,
through your mind?
Well, I first started, I first became diabetic when I was 18 years old. And I guess I was young and, I didn't feel sick. I mean, I would never feel sick. I was always, even though my blood sugars were like 300, 400, I always thought that I'm invincible and nothing's going to happen to me. I mean, I'm going to be fine and I'm going to be fine. And I would get cuts in other places because I did work construction. So, you always get cuts in constructions and stuff like that. So I was thinking, yeah, it's all right, it's all right. My wife is crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And then
Okay, wait.
Wow,
But,
Melissa,
yeah,
those are fighting words.
I was gonna say, yeah. But so Hector, let me ask you this: like, so how old are you right now, if you don't mind sharing?
49.
49. So for 20 plus years, you have been dealing with a medical issue that, unfortunately is a lot of it's out of your control. And I would imagine that over that time, because now you're having to see physicians to help with
Mhm.
the diabetes. And it sounds like, did you have diabetes cause problems with the kidneys as well? And that's why
Yes.
dialysis. I mean, so all
Yes.
the sequelae or the bad effects of diabetes are starting to add up. And I totally understand where you're coming from. So Melissa, let's rope you into this. Melissa, are you crazy? Were you crazy for this? For looking at
No,
his
not at
No, of
all.
course not. Of course not. Yes.
I'm an angel here.
Yeah.
Definitely, he would avoid going to doctors. It was like pulling teeth. He definitely, every time we'd go into a doctor's office, his blood pressure would go sky high and his sugars were high. So I think what pushed him from or avoiding doctors was because every time we'd go to the doctor, his blood pressure was so high they'd want to send him to the hospital. We'd go to the hospital, he'd get admitted. So it was a matter of no, I'm not going, and no, I'm not going. So finally, as he said, it started off as a small cut. It just started getting bigger. I kept pushing him, and as he mentioned, he was in construction, so he wore those boots. Sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad, and he'd be embarrassed. He says, "No, my feet are horrible. I don't want anybody to see my feet," and so on. Finally, he would complain. So yes, we did all kinds of home remedies, all kinds of you know, internet remedies and let's try this and let's order that. And nothing was helping until
So
finally, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say if we could bring in Dr. Bodart. So as a podiatrist, correct? We and folks with diabetes should see a podiatrist regularly to just do a wellness check on their feet. So just share us with, if you don't mind, with our audience, like why should someone with diabetes like Hector go see you who maybe doesn't have any problems with his feet?
Right. So the most important thing as a diabetic is the whole preventive care. The earlier that we recognize something, the sooner it can be taken care of. And then if you get a cut or a scrape, but you have good blood flow, you have the ability to heal it, you don't run into all the problems that kind of snowball into everything else. So I'll have patients come if they have absolutely no issues whatsoever, but they just have diabetes. I'll see them once a year just to check their feet. And I'm always encouraging them, look at your feet every day, because if you step on something tomorrow and you don't know it, I don't want to wait until you smell something or see something on your socks before you come to me for help. And unfortunately, that's kind of how things end up going as poorly as they do. But those who are getting the regular care, who are seeing their doctors, if you qualify for the podiatrist to cut your nails, some do, some don't. There are a bunch of rules on that. But if you qualify for that, then we're checking your feet on a regular basis and we can catch the earlier warning signs before it gets to the point where the toes are turning black and you have so much pain that you can't sleep and you can't live your life anymore.
Real quick, what are the rules for to have podiatry pay for the toenail cutting?
Yeah, so
I
there are
didn't know that.
Medicare guidelines, and everybody, all the other insurance companies also follow what Medicare says. So if you're a healthy diabetic with no issues whatsoever, no circulation problems, no problems with protective sensation, they say you're too healthy. You can do it, a family member can do it, a friend can do it, a neighbor, a stranger, it doesn't matter, because if something happens, you will heal or you'll know it. But a diabetic who doesn't have protective sensation, where if you cut yourself, you don't realize you cut yourself, that's when it becomes a danger, and that's when a doctor would need to do it, or you would need to do it at a doctor's office. Or if they have poor circulation, where if you accidentally cut yourself, you're at risk of not healing, that's another time when it's going to be covered by insurance. But there are criteria that if you go to see a podiatrist, we're checking pulses, we're checking hair growth, we're checking temperature. There's like a list of criteria that we go through to see if you qualify or if you don't qualify for us to trim your nails.
This is really helpful information. We should go to break, I think, even though we have a little extra time here, because I have some deep dive questions, and I'm sure Dr. Phillips does as well. We want to get more into the story. So stay with us right here on KDOW and don't go away. Boy, that wasn't the best toss.
Better. It's always better than what I would do. So Amy, I didn't know that. Like,
Yeah.
I thought you could just, this is perfect. I thought you could just, because I tell my patients, like, you probably should see a podiatrist and have them trim your nails, because I've had, I mean, you have too, but I can't, I mean, I've had so many patients that have ultimately lose a toe because they trim too close to the toenail. And I don't know that they didn't realize that they had neuropathy or whatever. And that's interesting to me. Okay. So do you see, if you see somebody in your office that like they're diabetic, they want you to trim their toenails, but if they don't qualify for it, or you just can't, you don't do it, or how does that work?
It's a kind of a case-by-case situation.
Okay.
It depends on what's going on. A lot of times I'll do it the first time as a courtesy, and then I'll recommend somewhere that they can go that I know that it's safe. We had a woman who does pedicures, who actually came to our practice and asked if she could shadow us to make sure she does it properly. So I know that
that's
she's
awesome.
going to be good and she knows what she's doing. And as far as the rules and stuff, that's always changing. So it used to be back in the day, if you're diabetic, it's covered. And that's the end of it. Now there are all these criteria. And of course, there are more and more and more of those that are limiting what insurance is going to cover.
What's so frustrating, though, for a lot of my patients that are not diabetic but have PAD, they're still concerned about their toes and doing the trimming themselves, and insurance doesn't cover it, and it costs them $60 and they can't afford it. And that's very frustrating. Sometimes the Global PAD Association has stepped in to help these patients get a regular trim, and we're more than happy to cover that to help them out, because they are willing to take steps to improve their health and to do the right thing to improve their prognosis. So, but I think that even the ARC Act that we're looking at on Capitol Hill, I think it needs to expand and include proper foot care being covered for patients with PAD. So expanding it from just diabetics to people with general PAD and poor circulation, maybe start with those who are in CLI and making sure that those are at least covered under insurance.
And there is a CLI component, or like a vascular component. So patients who don't have diabetes but have certain types, have vascular disease and meet a number of the criteria can still qualify. So it doesn't exclude anyone who's not diabetic. It just includes those who have specific things that our guidelines have said, okay, these are the requirements and this is what it takes.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think
interesting.
that's so important.
Hector, I'm curious, like, and I think we'll obviously get to this on the air, but how long was it between the trauma that you had to?
Hey, everyone, about 15 seconds till we air.
I guess we'll ask it then. All right.
Good question.
Good question. Every once in a while.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say howdy to the folks in Texas and just getting back from Texas. So let's continue the Save My Piggies episode. And Hector, so again, you had trauma to your foot, you're on dialysis, you have diabetes, so you certainly have risk factors for peripheral arterial disease. How long was it before you had the trauma to, obviously Melissa kind of had the red flags up, that you actually saw a physician or a wound care specialist? And was that your primary care doctor, or was it Dr. Bodart?
took me about 3 months to just cave in and say, you know what, let's go. And I did go to my primary, and I had to get
Referral.
a referral to Dr. Bodart, and that's when I went to go see her.
And when you got there, what did she say? Why did you wait
Well,
so long?
yeah, and you could see the look in I could see the look in her face that it wasn't good, because she really tried to keep me positive, but I could see it in her eyes that it wasn't good. It wasn't going to be a good outcome.
So real quick, before we get to Dr. Bodart, did your primary care physician do a vascular exam, or did they just look at the toe and say, we need to send you to somebody who can
No,
do
he said, let me see your foot. And I showed him my toes, and they were already turning color. So he said, you know what? You need to go see a specialist. And that's when he gave me the referral to Dr. Bodart.
Okay, so he just looked and he didn't check your pulses or anything like that.
No, nothing.
Well,
And
at least he got you the referral.
he was another doctor that referred me. It wasn't my primary now,
Original.
my
No.
original primary.
But Amy,
Yeah.
I mean, Hector's not an anomaly. Like
No.
I see this all the time. And I'd love
Yeah.
to at some point, and maybe for a different show, but get into like the psychology of the delay here. Because, and we've said this before, you feel a lump in your body somewhere, a woman in their breast, whatever, like that triggers a red flag. They're going to call somebody. But it's not just guys. I saw a gentleman today or this week in the hospital. His great toe was black. It was mummified. It was gone. And I said, how long has this been going on for? August. And he said it turned really aggressive within the last couple of weeks. But like, how do you explain that? And Kym and anybody here, how do you explain that to someone who's listening? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me, but it happens, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and that's where Hector, that fear, right, of what the doctor is going to say, and especially for a man. Now, for women, they're not afraid to go to the doctor. They just don't prioritize the doctor. I have a patient where Dr. David Alper, who's a renowned podiatrist, and he's also on our board of directors for the Global PAD Association. Amy knows him well. We had a patient that in our network, and he said, you need to go now. Don't pass go, just get there to go get this toe looked at because it needed a serious debriding and urgent vascular assessment. Oh, you know what? I'll get around to that. I'm getting ready to move. And so maybe next week, can you set me up with something next week? And he was like, no, time is tissue. I don't care what your situation is. Find a way to go now. And I don't know what goes through the minds of people when we say go now. It means go now, right, Hector? Because
That's
you
right.
not going now, what happened to you? And we can backtrack, into more details in the story. But what happened that when you said, I'm not going now, you delayed it 3 months. And because of that, what was the result?
Well, I just thought it was a simple. I would get cuts on my feet regularly, and they would just go away. I would put a little neosporin on them, and they would go away. And I figured it's gonna happen now, and of course you try, you prioritize work and your family and everything that's going on now. At the time, my mother was in intensive care, and she did die of they did a valve transplant, and she didn't make it, so at the time that was my priority too. It was like I need to check. I need to look over my mom. I need to be sure I have go to work. I need to make sure I go. I don't have time to go to the doctor. Like you said, I just, I was like, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. And it just, you just keep on putting it back because well, you think it's not as important as everything else that you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's true. And so it resulted though in an amputation.
Hmm. I had all my toes on my right foot taken off.
So
And
Amy, you assessed it and said, regardless of blood flow, these toes are not viable.
No,
And then
actually, Dr. Bodart was awesome. She right away sent me to my cardiologist, Dr. Raja, and Dr. Raja did do multiple tests, and he did two procedures. I don't remember. I'm not really good with terminology with the doctors, so he did two different procedures before Dr. Boulder said, "Look, you know what? It's time. There's nothing we can do."
so, Dr. Amy, uh, you looked at this foot. You said, "Whoa, before any sort of amputation, this is not acute right now. I'm not going to touch it until we make sure whether or not there is adequate blood flow to make sure to heal those wounds."
Correct. Because if you start with just a small wound on a toe and then I do a toe amputation and he doesn't have blood flow, I created a wound that's further back on his foot now. So I can create a bigger problem if we don't address the largest issue first. And fortunately, there wasn't a life-threatening infection at that time. So we had a little bit of time, but it's really important for us as providers and physicians to stress to the patients how important it is to get to that other doctor now, like as quickly as possible. And it's nice because I'm texting the other doctors and saying, "Hey, I've got this patient, I'm sending him to you. We'll send his information." So they have his phone number. They can call him and say, "Hey, where are you? Get over here." And we have that connection that we've built. It took some time, but now we have the people and we know who to call on in these cases.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have more of Hector's story. So stay with us. I think we should hear from Melissa and her perspective as well.
Yes.
So don't go away. Dr. Amy, that is such amazing advice. I think that's so important for people to hear. And I love that you ended that answer with stating that since we assessed there wasn't a life-threatening infection, we could actually go in and have a little bit of time. But there are those situations where actually going in and doctors have told me, we need to just get that toe off because there's a life-threatening infection in there. And if we poke the bear, that infection's going to be all over the body and become systemic. Right?
Yeah. And it's just learning to balance all of that because there's always risk of infection when you have any sort of wound. And when you have dead tissue, that's going to allow any bacteria that gets in there to have a place to feed, really. So it's a balance, and it's something that as a physician you learn and you start to kind of recognize, okay, this needs to be treated right now. This can wait until they're seeing cardiology. We have to both keep eyes on it or whatever the situation is.
And Dr. Phillips, would you mind weighing in on that? Because it's something that we are faced with a lot. When you say, "Oh my gosh, I am not going to revascularize right now. We just need this limb off because if I touch this and I start getting blood flow, that infection is going to be everywhere."
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, it's not. There's a couple of things. Sometimes you can tell that foot is infected, and there's other clinical signs that it has to come off because then you get a bloodstream infection. And you can become septic and expire from that. But the other issue is sometimes folks can have such profound ischemia, or lack of blood flow, which is relatively acute, that if you open up the vessels, it can create this cascade of, for lack of a better term, bad humors that can ultimately lead to metabolic instability and cardiac arrest and death. We've had a couple of patients in my 10 or 11 plus years that have died shortly after a procedure when we tried to open it up in an acute setting, in a setting that happened, the blockage had been going on for, less than 24 hours. But for the most part, I can probably count on two hands the number of folks that I've seen that I've gone in and said, you know what, they need the amputation. They're sick. But to Amy's point, a lot of times we can revascularize these folks. And obviously we'll talk about this on the air, but you have to you kind of have to mitigate the amputation. Sounds like Hector's foot was in jeopardy and probably the leg too. And hopefully the interventions that were done helped limit the amount of tissue loss and allowed it to just stop at the transmetatarsal. I'm assuming that's what it was, as opposed to the major amputation, which is below the knee or above the knee.
Yeah, I can see you nodding, Amy. You agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no one
so-
likes to lose the piggy. I mean, we
No.
call it save my piggies. No one likes to lose them, but that's better than losing your leg and
Yes.
obviously your life.
Yeah. And you know, what was really scary is this morning, one of our moderators in the group and I were contending with a patient who is trying to build his brand as an influencer because he is an amputee. But it's now gotten to a point where it's dangerous, where he came into our group and actually told one of our patients that presented in a post that they had damage to their arteries and to their foot and this and that. And he said, I had my leg cut off. You go get your leg cut off. Like, go get your leg cut off. And to me, he said it was just his opinion. And I said, no, that's no longer an opinion when you tell people to go get their legs cut off. That is dangerous medical advice and inappropriate behavior. And it's scary. Some of the stuff that's out there, the information that's out there, and people out there just saying, just go get your leg cut off. Oh, it's great. It's treatment. When it's actually literally a failure of, the system overall. And yes, treatment, amputation can be treatment. We've sent people for amputation because they have an acute leg attack, and it happens. But the problem that we're having is that more than 60% of these amputations that are occurring are preventable. And we want to do everything in our power, right? To say, hey, have all options be exhausted.
The last time I went to my pain management doctor, there was a lady.
My bad. 3 seconds till we air.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Save My Piggies. So, Amy, I wanted to ask you, you knew that his toes were in jeopardy, possibly the leg. You also, based on your assessment, knew that he had peripheral arterial disease and the most serious form of it. You mentioned that you have a pretty good network of interventionalists or surgeons or whomever that you can work with. Can you just share with the audience a little bit? Because there's a lot of times you can put a referral in, but that patient may not see the proceduralist for a month or two. And it's so important to have that direct communication. And as it stands, texting is what I use, and you might use that as well. But it just explain to us like how important it is to find maybe just one interventionalist that you can, really rely on and trust that will help you and get that patient back to you too. Because sometimes they'll send them to their buddy as well.
Yeah. So I guess as you're in a community, you just kind of start to get to know the other physicians, the other specialists in their areas, and get to know who you can trust, who's good at their area. You network, you build communication with them, and yeah, I'm sending texts to them, and I'm sending often. If I send a patient to the hospital, I'm sending a group text. So I'm sending it to the vascular doctor, I'm sending it to infectious disease, I'm sending it to the admitting physician, and I'm sending it to some of their nurse practitioners so that we're all on board. And then we're also calling the hospital to tell them. But nothing against Hector or his family, but it's not unusual for me to tell a patient, you need to go do this, and for them to say, okay. And then they either don't do it or they do it a week later, a month later, who knows how long. So if we depend on the patient to get everything done, when we know how urgent this is, we're setting them up for failure. So we have to build networks with each other to help encourage these patients to come in and get the care that they need. So we're sending the referrals to the other doctors, but we're also directly communicating with that physician, because the referral can sit on their desk for a couple of days, and those couple of days can be a difference between saving or losing a limb. So we need to have those connections.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I know with your team at the Limb Savers Society that they try really hard to make sure that within this amazing tight-knit network that you have all developed there, that these patients are not falling through the cracks, that everyone is on the same page, that they need to act and they need to act quick. And it's interesting when we've dealt with these types of situations, actually across the globe, where maybe the front office may not realize that this is something that needs to be prioritized right now because everyone's short-staffed, right? There are everyone's being pulled in so many different directions. I love the responsiveness of doctors like Dr. Phillips, who will come back to me because I've done it to him and I've said, hey, the office hasn't called. And he's like, whoa, let me get on it, because they may not realize, and it might take just their touch to say, and little nudge to say, would you mind doing this right now? And I think that's incredible because everyone, I think, really wants to do the right thing.
Well, 100%. And those of us that work for a health system, we don't know. There's essential scheduling, and the essential schedulers sometimes don't have a clinical background, so they don't know the urgency of it. And really, you just have to bypass it. Or at least that's what we do, and that's what Amy does. You text people, and you get them. You get everybody together. You rally the troops. But Amy, I want to ask your opinion, because you had said before, nothing against Hector, he just didn't go in when maybe you had recommended. And let me play devil's advocate. Well, so what, right? Like, you did what you could. Why go the extra mile? It's, I hear it that it's a patient's responsibility. You lead a horse to water, all the platitudes, whatever. So why go the extra mile? And then the follow-up question I have is, we have failed the patients early on if they don't understand how horrible this disease is. And so then how do we educate folks, obviously doing things like this, but how do we educate folks so when you tell them you got to go, they go?
Loaded questions.
There's a lot to unpack there. Lots to unpack, Amy.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
I need you to break that down a little bit more. Ask the first question.
So
Just the first question.
My first question is actually the one that I really want to get into, is a devil's advocate one, right? So you took it upon, like, Hector didn't follow up, right, Hector, or whatever it was.
Yes.
You did what you could. Why go that extra mile?
Because I know the impact that it has on that patient in their lives, to the extent that they may not realize. And it's really about caring for the person and the patient, and not just looking at the condition, not just looking at their foot, but being able to see what the future could hold depending on which direction they go right now. So I want to do everything in my power to help them take that step. I can't drive them to the clinic. I can't force them to say yes, to pick up the phone, to answer, and to be there. But I can do everything in my power to help him as much as I can, knowing what could happen if he does and what could happen if he doesn't.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we will have more with Hector, Melissa, and Dr. Amy. So don't go away. You don't want to miss a moment of this story. I think that we are clear. We have 4 minutes in this last segment, but wondered if you guys, again, could stick around. I think that this is amazing. And so what will air right now will air, but then what we'll do is, as I mentioned before the show began, that I would love we go ahead and we re-edit as well, post show. And then in the next few days, I will repost the full broadcast on YouTube, so that everything's included in the actual broadcast as well. I mean, this live taping will be there, but I just pare it down and organize it a little bit so it becomes more digestible for most people.
It's awesome. But I think the bigger question I was getting at was, we have failed the patients, and Kym, you mentioned this, because if they don't understand the gravity of it, then then that doesn't translate ultimately to them seeking the medical attention that you had recommended. We need to figure out a way to fix that. And obviously it's shows like this, and like Hector knows now, right? And Melissa.
Yes. Now, when Dr. Bodart told me that I had to go see the cardiologist, Dr. Raja. We waited what, like a couple of days?
Yeah, it was a couple of days, but it was a matter of we didn't we waited, but we were calling. Dr. Bodart had great communication with us. Dr. Raja had great communication with us. I mean, but they brought him in and it was like immediately, he was seen. And how Dr. Bodart states now, I mean, I'm that annoying wife, because I have everybody's number. He doesn't. I see something happening. I leave to work. He doesn't know. I'm calling Dr. Bodart's office. I'm calling Dr. Raja's nurse. And we're like, guess what? We're going to the hospital today. You have another procedure. He says, when did that happen? I said, I spoke to Dr. Bodart. And he says, she didn't tell me yet, but she told me, and we have communication going, same being at the hospital. Sometimes the nurses at the hospital be like, no, well, you can't leave. We need this. And I'm like, not a problem. I'll text Dr. Bodart's office. I'll text Dr. Raja's office. They show up and they're like, how did you get a hold of him? I'm like, you're not touching his foot, So now
But the system is broken in the sense that if every patient acted like you did or did what you did, you would overload Amy's system and she could not. I mean, like, we can't function this way. And that's what's frustrating. I mean, I have a handful. I was texted by a podiatrist just a little bit north of here, and he said, I see 20 to 30 people with wounds every week, and I don't have a vascular specialist to get them to. And I'm like, dude, we'll take them, but if you just like you'd overload the system if everybody texted me or texted Amy, because you can't do it. So that's the thing. Like, it's broken. Obviously, we do the best we can, and you guys are lucky. I mean, Melissa, you need a shout out here. You are, you guys should be wearing, the Los Angeles, isn't it the Angels? You should be the Angels, not the Dodgers. Well, you dodged a bullet and you got an angel. So maybe one of the
There you go.
So what should we cover in this last? I'd like to give, since Melissa didn't have a chance for most of the main part of the
give her a shout
show.
out.
Sorry, I froze for a second. In the final segment, we have about, I said 4 minutes. Wondered if we could get Melissa in for a couple minutes, just just her perspective of just how frustrating it is and how she got him to it, but then kind of the final thoughts of where are you at in your care, and what are the next steps, and what is your advice, both Melissa and Hector, for other patients in your situation. I mean, especially, in your culture, in the Hispanic culture, we're struggling with that. I can't get people to eat right, and I can't get people to stay on our walking program. It's like, well, they'll just, when it's the time is right, we'll just have that little roto rooting thing. And it's like, no. We can prevent this. And then after the show's over, then we can go into some deeper things. And I know Douglas has questions and a few other people have questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. That would be great, because I want to give you a greater opportunity, and then also
All right,
we
everyone.
can talk about
5 seconds till we air.
You're right, it's short.
1220 KDOW. Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. For those of you watching on our YouTube channel, Hector and Melissa are wearing Dodgers jerseys, and we are rounding third on this show. Before we slide home, I think we do need to give a shout out to Melissa. And Melissa, you certainly were his angel and obviously his care advocate. So tell us a little bit about your struggles. And, obviously he lost some piggies, but we saved the leg. How are you feeling about this? Where is his care going? And just some final thoughts.
Well, he lost his piggies because the tow truck took him.
the tow truck. Got it.
All right.
With that said, I mean, it's been a difficult journey. It's been difficult, but we've gone there. We've jumped around. We've had great doctors work with us, and he's getting better. I mean, it's taken a little longer than we've expected, but I mean, it's diabetes, high blood pressure and all, but it's all under control. After a very long time, everything's under control, and he's doing a lot better. We follow up, we make sure to follow up. We have calendars, we have, we're contacting doctors. Any questions we have, we no longer hold back. Any questions, he may still hold back a little, but I don't. And even if I don't make it to the doctor's appointments, I'm calling the office and I'm speaking to the assistants, the nurses, even at times the doctors. So it's just a matter of, you may be your spouse, your significant other, family member may be a little stubborn and all, but you need to keep pushing. You need to keep pushing and even step over them if you need to, and it's for their own good.
And from both of you, are any tips for other, spouses or partners or whomever, family members, in getting through that stubbornness? And I say, stubbornness with the kindest heart and intention and so
You
much
know,
love.
exactly.
Yes.
It's just a matter of, you can explain and tell them everything that can and will happen, and they still won't. It still won't get through them, until they're actually going through it. And even then, it's a lot of anger, a lot. It can even get to depression, but it's a matter of that you will get better, and this will help.
Yeah, I think for me the best thing is her. She scheduled all my appointments. All of a sudden she came to me and said, we're going to a podiatrist. I mean, like I said, I wasn't very knowledgeable about doctors. So I looked there and I said, what am I going to a kid doctor for? I thought she said
Pediatrician.
pediatrician. And I was like, what? What am I? I don't even. And she's like, no, it's for your foot. And she's the one that pushed me to it. And I mean, now I'm glad that she did. I mean, I did lose my toes, but after that, it's been I don't miss any appointments.
Good for
I
you.
mean,
Thank
I
you
go
so
to
much for both of you being here and for sharing your story. It means the world to us, and hopefully others will act sooner rather than later to help save their piggies as well. Okay, perfect. So we can go ahead. We just needed to be silent for those
Nice
that are watching on
closing,
YouTube.
Kimberly. Nice closing. I love it. That was
I didn't
awesome.
do a thing. That was all Hector and Melissa
Yeah.
for that. And Hector, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you wanted to continue that train of thought, I can always just bring it in later. But also, we are still live on YouTube, and so you had a really amazing train of thought going, and it was very powerful with both of you. And I love the candid nature of it. So, Hector, did you want to continue with that train of thought?
well, just I mean, I I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And I say they're my two special women in my life right now is Dr. Bodart and Melissa, because first of all, Dr. Bodart made me realize some bad habits that I had to quit, like smoking and vaping and eating better than what I was. It was amazing the way Dr. Bodart explained it to me with Melissa backing her up. It was like an eye opener. So after that, I I'm not very into public speaking. I really ain't. But because of everything they did, I volunteered to talk. I don't mind somebody texting me, calling me, or emailing me, or asking, questions, because I will try my best to lead them. Like I was telling you earlier, the other day I went to my pain management, and there was a lady there, and her whole foot was black, and I was like, and I turned around and I said, in Spanish, I asked her, ma'am, what's going on? I mean, how come you haven't gone to a doctor? And she said, it doesn't matter, whatever. And I sat there and I talked to her for a good 10 minutes. And hopefully I made her understand that she needed to go see a doctor.
So let
That's
me
another
ask.
situation, Dr. Phillips,
Yep.
exactly what you were saying.
No,
But
yeah.
why?
Well, why?
I
But
don't
then
understand either.
so Amy, and again, I think different ethnicities might respond differently to medical situations and, trust of physicians or whatnot. But so Amy, in El Paso, right? There's a lot of Hispanics, but I'm assuming you see Caucasians and African Americans and whatever. Like, is it true? Like, are Hispanic men, as Hector you alluded to, more reluctant to see a physician than me as a white guy, or is that just a fallacy?
It does seem to be a little bit more prevalent upon with Hispanic men. I do see it in people of all races. And I do see typically the men are more hesitant to go see the doctor than the women. And it's the woman who pushes the man to go. I've seen variations of that, and I have seen men that are willing. Um, the In a way, the blessing that we have in El Paso is, in general, the Latino culture tends to respect physicians almost too much sometimes, because they will take me at my word. And if I tell someone they need to have something cut off, a lot of them will say, "Oh, okay." And they'll just go for it and not ask any questions and not go for another opinion and not push advocate for themselves, because they don't know. They see the
Yeah.
doctor
Yeah.
almost as a god. So it's
Okay.
important to educate my patients, not only in my field, but to ask questions of their other physicians and to make sure they're getting the best care. And the challenge in the medical field is that we have so little time to spend with each patient. And I'm always going over, and my patients are always waiting, because I will take the time that each patient needs. But all my patients understand that. So different people work in different ways, different doctors work in different ways. It's a matter of finding who and what works for you, who you're comfortable with, to be able to ask the kinds of questions that you need to ask so that you can get the right care. And going to another doctor, I'll encourage my patients, ask somebody else. I'm not the final word, but it's just getting that education out there.
That's such a good point that most of our doctors that we've dealt with, I haven't met one in our network that um, will ever tell a patient, don't get another opinion. It actually, like, you know what, before any procedure, I want to learn if someone has a different option. I mean, you never know if a fellow doctor might be participating in a study for a product that you didn't even know existed at that point. You can't know about all of these different things, and the way trials work is there's only a select few, and different doctors are chosen for different things, and you just might not know. So maybe someone across town might be experimenting with some new fish skin, right? And you just might not know it. You may go, "Oh, shoot, why don't I have that? Why am I not part of this?" But isn't it great to know? And so if a patient goes and gets another opinion, finds out about this, and then at that point, they can make a well-informed decision, and they can come back to you and say, "Hey, this doctor had this fish skin. We tried it. It worked." And you're going to go, "Thank goodness I did not have to take your toes because of it." You're going to be excited. Now, with that being said, I have to say, and I think I said this, Dr. John, I don't remember if I said this in an actual show or I said it to you offline, but we did have a patient just, I think it was last week, where the doctor did want to take her entire leg. She didn't even have a wound. She was lifestyle limiting, in terms of her claudication. That doesn't mean take the leg. Told her stents wouldn't work. The only durable option is just taking the whole leg. She found us. We got her a second opinion. The second opinion doctor said, "Well, I can open it up. It's not going to be durable. But what it will do is give you just a little bit more blood flow, that if you walk, 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 and you promise to walk, 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 to start building those natural bypasses, I will go ahead and I will open you up. And I need to place a couple of stents because you have this long calcified occlusion, and it may need some stents to keep it open a little bit longer. It will close, but when it closes, if you've done your job by walking, it won't need to be reopened." She goes back to the other doctor, so excited that she's built all these collateral vessels. She feels great for the first time in years. And the doctor says, "You're delusional. You still have the same blockages you had before. You still should get your leg cut off." He was just upset that she went for another opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share this with you. So, in just I guess the reason I'm sharing this is because it just kind of goes to the mentality that some physicians might have, or any professional for that matter. I mean, I guess I I swim in the pool of physicians. But when I was at that meeting for reflow, I polled the audience and I just asked them, like, how many times when you go to a physician or call on a physician, are you like basically afraid not, or, like, are you afraid to speak up during a case or say something? Meaning you might get reprimanded or the doctor does not want to hear what you have to say. And the majority of people, they raise their hand, which just leads me to believe like a lot of us have egos and, a lot I know physicians that don't like it when their patients get a second opinion, but I've said this 100 times. I encourage people to get second opinions from me. I'm not the end all be all, but, and if I ever turn on that patient, shame on me. And I hope, and I will never do that, but it happens. And that's why it's frustrating for patients too, because a lot of times they develop a really strong bond with a physician, and maybe to a fault, they will, like a lemming, follow them off a cliff, or if they tell them to jump. But I think you just have to, at the end of the day, you've got to be an advocate for yourself. And Hector, you said it, and I was going to ask you, we didn't have enough time, but I wanted to, like, would you be alive if Melissa did not get your ass in gear, frankly, or Dr. Bodart, and they got your ass in gear and you're alive, right? So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, I mean, that's all you need. You need an advocate. You need somebody to say, you know what? I don't know about this. Let me find somebody else or whatever.
I'm still curious about that breakthrough I mean, if Hector, you're sitting there, I mean, did you have any resistance to Melissa? I mean, she's your wife, and you don't want to do what you don't want to do, and you're not going to be told. And that can create a lot of friction in a marriage, and it may not come well from your wife telling you this, or from a parent or a kid telling you what to do. So what
Even
was
a
the
doctor.
approach? So what was the approach that really worked for you that made you give in? I'm sure that it didn't, you said that you were even resistant at first, even though she said, and I'm sure that was frustrating. Love to hear it from Melissa afterwards about how frustrating that was for him not to listen and see him suffer. But go ahead, Hector.
The reason I decided to go to the doctor was because I saw Melissa's frustration, the worry, and when I finally decided to go is because I saw that she was scared. She was very scared, and her and my daughter, because she was a big part of it too. Uh, the time I said, you know what, okay, let's go, is because they were both crying and they were both telling me they didn't want to lose me, because of something that can be taken care of, you know what I mean, for me to stay alive.
Were you scared?
No,
you were not.
no, I got scared when Dr. Raja told me there's nothing we can do but try to take the toes off and not take your whole leg off. That's when I got scared. That's when I was like, wait a minute, this is no joke.
Real.
It's not a joke. It's not something that's gonna go away with uh what's it called, the neosporin. I said, no, this is, and
But
yes, I did get scared, but at the
so
beginning I wasn't. I really wasn't. I was like, it's gonna go away. It's gonna go away. It's gonna go away. And yes, like Kelly said, there was a lot of times that Melissa would tell me, and I would tell her, don't be telling me what to do. I know what I'm gonna do. Don't be trying to, I'm not your little kid. I'm gonna do what I want to do. And there was a lot of times that happened. A lot of times in the beginning, but well, thanks to Dr. Bodart and her, and my daughter, they opened my eyes, and I'm glad they did, because like I said, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now.
So what is your suggestion for other people? I first want to say, Dr. John, you seem stunned by
Well,
his answer.
I guess I'm just thinking about it. Is it a control? Part of me was like, man, I wish we had a psychiatrist or a psychologist on the show just to kind of unpack a lot of this, because I guess the way I interpret what Hector is saying is, maybe was it a control thing? Like, you just didn't want people telling you what to do. You probably knew that this wasn't good. But in the same vein, you didn't want someone saying, "Hey, you got to do this," and maybe it was like, "Hey, I'm going to do it when I'm ready to do it." And
Exactly.
clearly, we didn't. We as medical professionals did not, I guess, arm you with enough information about your disease process. Having diabetes since 18, were you like a late type 1? So do you make insulin at all, or do you?
No,
You do
I
make
don't.
insulin?
I
Right. So I
use
mean,
insulin.
you require insulin. So then those folks have more progression of vascular disease than just the type 2s. And then obviously you were on dialysis for how long prior to the foot wound?
About a year.
And then,
About a year.
You see, but even then, for the dialysis, he had never really taken care of the diabetes or because he's also had high blood pressure. It was always a matter of he takes some medications here and there throughout the years. And then he'd have insurance, and that was one issue. He didn't have insurance, and then he got insurance, and even when he got the insurance, I made appointments, and at that point they had told him, kidney function doesn't look too good, and he's like, yeah, all right. We went to a nephrologist said, oh, okay, it's okay. Then he didn't want to go anymore. We stopped going, and then he started gaining weight and just plumping up, and we thought, okay, he's eating too much, he's gaining weight. But his demeanor, everything just changed completely. And at that point, he fell, he passed out. So that, like I'm saying, even then he wouldn't go to the doctor, and he wouldn't go to that. And that day when he fell on me, I thought he was playing, because he can play jokes on me, and I thought, he's joking around. But when he hit himself on the dresser, and I was like, okay, he's not playing. And I said, I'm calling the ambulance, I don't care what you want to do. And even then he still said, no, 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 I'm not going. I said, well, you're going. I said, this is so, we still didn't call the ambulance. I took him to the hospital, got to the hospital, and they said, looks like he has a heart attack and he has kidney failure. He's not going anywhere. And yes, we are calling the ambulance, because we went to a emergency care that was closest to the house. So, so even then he waited last minute. And even after going
Hector,
through that,
Hector,
It
after
was.
all of that, and your wife being right and saving your life back then, what made you question her then again with your toes?
It's a culture thing, I guess. It's just that thing that
he's
you think
stubborn.
that. Look, let me try to explain it. I was diagnosed with diabetes since I was 18.
Yeah.
For 20 some years, I didn't feel anything. So I figured, that's diabetes, I'll be fine. I mean, there's nothing gonna. And then they would tell me, you have high blood pressure, like big time. I'll go to the doctor, and my blood pressure was like at 200 over 100. I mean, and it was like, I'll be fine. Give me a pill and I'll take it, and I'll be okay. But I guess, I mean, I know I was wrong. Now I know I was wrong. That's why I tell Melissa, and I try to help out or talk to as many people as I can. That's why I don't.
So it must have been like so you're losing control of your body, but what you can control is whether or not you see a doctor or do some. And I don't know, maybe was it a loss of, we touched on this before, but the reason I say control is because I remember in training, we would see kids that had sickle cell. So they would be in the hospital pretty regularly with this crises, and you had to kind of help them through the crises with pain management. And like they were losing, these kids, teenagers, African American for the most part, because it's a genetic thing, they're losing control. And you would see them, they would act out at school. I would hear I love tattoos, but they would get tattoos, piercings, and I think that was their way of enacting some control on their body when the rest of the infrastructure, so to speak, was falling apart. And I've seen this with patients as well. Like they can control uh, what they can control, they want to control. And I'm not blaming you, Hector. I'm just saying, like, I've seen this before.
No, exactly that's exactly right, Dr. Lo. I was like, if I'm gonna control something, I'm gonna control myself. You know, I mean, like my mind, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna get there, and I never did. I mean, you know, it's kind of hard to. I was raised in a very Mexican family upbringing. You know, it was like my both my parents are from Mexico. Both my parents have had. My mom had diabetes. My dad had diabetes. My dad had quadruple bypass. My mom had her valves exchanged, or I don't know what it is that they did. Uh, my dad is still alive, but he keeps on drinking and smoking and you know eating whatever he wants. And you know, after my mom passed, and I'll be, I mean, I don't want to sound like a, you know, oh, this guy just because of his mom, but you know, it's true because of my mom. I said, wait a minute, I don't want to die that young. My mom was 65 when she passed, you know, and I was like, I thank God that I've my arteries and everything are good. They you know, doctor said I get an EKG every what 6 months,
Yeah.
6 or to a year, and he always tells me that everything is good. You know, I mean, that's one thing that I'm glad for. But you know, it was just a matter of me being stubborn. There's no other answer that I can give you. I was
But
just a
also a
stubborn
lack
man.
of education, right?
Yes, ma'am.
They didn't
Well,
talk
no,
about it.
actually, all my doctors from when I was diabetic, that I would go to the doctor, they would tell me, you need to be careful. You need to, you know, they would give me pamphlets and I would just throw them in the car and, you know, whatever. You know, I mean,
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt on that one.
no,
Wow.
But
I
you know
love
what,
no,
that.
no,
Hector?
man.
At least
No,
you're
man.
honest, Hector. At least you're
Yes,
I
honest.
love
Like,
that.
yes.
yeah, you are.
And I just, I mean, I kept on smoking. I kept on drinking. I didn't care. I would, you know, just do whatever I wanted. You know, I did whatever I wanted. And now I'm facing the consequences. You know, I'm on dialysis. I got my toes taken off. And if I can help one person try to change, you know, the way they think, especially Hispanic, I mean, I'll help whoever, I don't care. But especially Hispanic men, because women are a little bit different. But if I could help one person, I would. I I mean, that's why I accepted your invitation to the podcast. That's why I accepted Dr. Bodart's invitation to go speak with to the doctors. You know, I try to tell people that on my in my family that are diabetic, you know, you need to be careful, man. You know, you need to watch what you eat. You need to watch. I said, look at what happened to me. I don't want the same thing to happen to you. You know, and I tell them the pain before and after are unbearable. I mean, the pain is ridiculous. It is bad. I mean, I went nights without sleeping because of the pain. Even with taking heavy pain medication, I still couldn't sleep. You know, and I just want to thank. The reason I do all this is because of Melissa and because of my all my doctors. You know, because they all pitched in. Even though I was being stubborn, they all kept on fighting and they kept on pushing me. And thank God, I thank God that right now I all the only thing I'm missing are my toes. You know, nothing else. And
Your piece.
I
So
think
what is
there's
life like?
also a denial and there's a fear. It's probably an underlying fear with all of it that,
Mhm.
yeah, wanting to be in control is a big thing in a lot of cultures, definitely Hispanic cultures. Um, but there's also this, it'll go away if I don't deal with it, if I don't look at it, if I don't pay attention to it, and not wanting to face what the future may hold, not wanting to even think about consequences or anything, and just pushing all of that aside and wanting to just live a normal day and just keep living normal days and not go through this traumatic experience, because it really was. In the long term, not great decisions, but we're not always thinking long term. We're thinking, let me live in the now, let me deal with now. And that's how I think a lot of things get overlooked or bypassed or not dealt with as quickly as we hope they will be. And even with the education that we're given, we still have to have a patient that's open and able and willing to receive it. And that was something that Hector came around. It took a while, but he really came around. And I was so proud of him for the ways that he's changed his life and every step that he's taken. And I think it was really amazing when he could see the difference it was making with the choices that he made. When the sugar was more controlled, when he was not smoking or smoking less and less and less, and then his wound started to really heal. And it was that light bulb moment that made a huge difference. And I also remember those days in the hospital where he was in such excruciating pain. And I'm just trying to evaluate his toes, and I'm hurting him. And I know that I am. And I'm balancing, okay, what do I need to do as a doctor? But how can I do it in a way that's compassionate and not causing more harm, but still allowing me to get the information that I need? And going through everything that Hector's been through and the way that Melissa, you've been there for him, made a huge difference, because there were dark times. There were really hard, dark times. And having that support system made a huge difference and helped him through it. So now we're on the other side. And now we can look back. And now you can talk to people and help them wherever they are. If they're at the very beginning, if they're in those hard moments, or if they're finally past it and it's like, okay, now what? Like, what do I do? How do I live now? Like, I don't have my toes. Can I still walk? Can it still, all the questions that people have. And as a patient, a specific side of it that even we as trained physicians don't, because we're not in your shoes. So that's, I think, why it's so valuable for you to be able to and be willing to talk to people, to share your story, and to be a resource for those who are going through it, so that they know they're not doing it alone.
Yes,
Mhm.
Well said.
I think it's really important that there are still a lot of doctors that will say, and I even mentioned earlier that there was a patient, so just go ahead and get it cut off, thinking that that is the end all be all and the solution and the pain's going to go away. But that's not the case. It's not as easy as just cut my toes off and I can get my life back to normal and the pain goes away. Describe what it's like following an amputation like this.
Oh, it's, of course, the pain. We've been talking about that. The pain is sometimes unbearable. The depression hits in. Uh, and I'm ashamed to say it now, but I was at the verge of suicide because of the pain and because I realized that my life wasn't going to be the same anymore. You know, given the dialysis, the toes, it was bad. I mean, and it took Melissa to get me out of that funk. I mean, I was like Dr. Bodart said, it was a very dark time for about a good 6 months. It was bad. It was really bad. And like I said, thank God to all my doctors that they all, they all would tell me, you need like my primary doctor is my pain management doctor. So I would go to him and I would tell him, look, doctor, it's bad. It's bad. It's really bad. And he never hesitated. He never told me, well, just, it's in your head or whatever. He gave me meds and they helped. I mean, they helped little by little. They started helping. And of course, again, Melissa helped me through a lot of those dark times. The first thing she did was take away all my guns. she would talk to me and tell me, look, she would make me get up and go and walk, or make me go get up and take a drive, and do different things so that I wouldn't be sitting there thinking of being dumb, I mean, because that,
Or thinking about the pain,
yeah,
he'd fall asleep in the car, he'd fall
yeah,
asleep, and I'd be tired. I'd get home from work, because then that's another thing. He stopped working. He wasn't able to work anymore. So I think that affected him even more. He's at home. I'm working, and he does some part-time here and there, but I mean, it's not the same. It's not the same, but we'd be driving. My daughter and I would be driving and driving.
sometimes for 2-3 hours
Yeah.
drive, so that I could go to sleep in the car, because I couldn't sleep anywhere else. I couldn't lay down because of my dialysis. I was still full of liquid, so I couldn't lay down. Sitting down, it was hard, but I guess the car would rock me like a little baby. It would rock me to sleep, and she would drive for
Hours.
3 hours, around El Paso, just going, and I didn't know what she was doing. I was asleep, and then when I would wake up, she would tell me, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah," and then we would drive home. But again, I go back to the same thing. Without her, I don't think things would have turned out good.
Another
So
thing I'll mention is that Dr. Bodart mentioned the smoking. He was smoke a lot. Once he got sick, he was smoking even more. And I can say Dr. Bodart would push, you're not going to heal. And he's like, how is cigarette smoking not gonna heal my wound? So I started looking it up. I started talking to Dr. Bodart. Once Dr. Bodart would leave the room, I'm like, I gotta go to the restroom, and go talk to Dr. Bodart. And Dr. Bodart's like, is he smoking? Yes, he's smoking. And yes, Dr. Bodart threw me under the bus a couple of times. She's like, I know you're smoking. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never gonna hear the end of it. And sure enough, you big mouth. And I was like, well, come on. So little by little, I start throwing cigarettes away, and I'm like, you're smoking too much. He's like, I know I didn't smoke that. I'm like, yes, you did. And little by little, he stopped smoking. And miraculously, his wound started closing, and it's like, what's going on here? Your wound is closing and you're not smoking. So that's something big too, that a lot of people don't understand, that smoking is really bad and it doesn't heal.
But they
So
don't
there's
understand the mechanism of action. And the way I describe it, and of course, Dr. Amy and Dr. John, if you don't like the way I'm saying it, please weigh in and weigh in anyway. But the way I tell people is that the oxygen can't get on the school bus when the chemicals are on the school bus. They're like big bad bullies, like get the off the school bus. And the oxygen can't get to the areas it needs to because it can't get on the school bus. And you need oxygen and other nutrients to heal those wounds. And the moment that oxygen can get on the school bus and be delivered where it
it
needs
makes a
to in
big
your
difference.
wounds, that's when you start seeing the healing.
Yes.
That's my non-clinical explanation.
I like it.
No, that's perfect.
It makes sense.
Well, I mean, but
It
it
makes
also, the nicotine damages the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessels and the things. And we've known for many, many years that it affects not only the the arteries, but it also has to do change nitric oxide production, things of that nature. So it's just bad, right? But
Yeah.
it's addiction. People can't. I mean, they've been doing some. It's like you've been brushing your teeth every day. You smoke every day. I mean, it's really hard to break that habit. So kudos, man. Seriously, heck, kudos
Thank
to
you.
you. Kudos to
Thank you.
Melissa and Amy. Thanks for sharing. I've got to run. I've got to
Yeah,
take
thank
my
you so
son to
much,
basketball. But
everyone, for joining us. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
doctor.
you. And we'd love to have you
yeah,
back. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. And for those watching, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/at the way to my heart. And we'll bring you more content like this to hopefully help you to inspire to, you and your